should you buy a naked bike or should you buy a fully fared sport bike? Well, today we're going to go over the reasons why you should buy one or the other, the pros and cons to both, why you should buy a naked bike or why you should go with a sport bike. So starting with naked bikes, real quick, let's cover some of the pros and cons. Now, starting with the cons is going to be the wind in the face. Another con to most people would be the top speed, which doesn't bother me that much. But let's talk about the pros. It's super comfortable to ride. They're super punchy and torquey most of the time because they're kind of geared for around the city. The seating position is also another huge pro. It's super comfortable. All right, so now what are the pros and cons of a sport bike or fully fared motorcycle? Now, starting off with the cons, like we did with the naked bikes, is going to be that seating position. At least for me, that's a big thing. On a sport bike, you're going to be in a lot more committed of a seating position, so you're going to be kind of hunched over the tank, kind of like this. There's going to be a lot more pressure on your wrists and back, and I'll tell you, if you ride for more than a couple of hours, that seating position, you start to feel it, and you feel it quicker than you would think, unless you're on something like a 650 that's kind of more relaxed, or a 400, it has a more relaxed seating position. In that case, you'll probably be fine with the seating position, but honestly, anything 600 class and above is just going to suck for seating, and I say that with experience. I own a ZX6R for a couple of months, and I just couldn't with that seating position. It was not very comfortable, but I can tell you Ninja 500, 400, R3, all those are much more upright. They're a lot more comfortable, so if you're looking at that beginner bike class, that might not be a huge issue. Now, another thing to consider with the sport bikes as far as cons go is going to be the way they are geared. They have a lot taller gears, which equates to, less of that punchy, naked bike that you get with something like this, MT-09. You get those short punchy gears, MT-07. A lot of those naked bikes have a lot shorter gears, but you have a lot taller gears, which honestly isn't an issue for the 650 class and below. Not a big issue. Those 400s are fine. Most 650s are fine. But it's once you get into that 600 and above class, those gears, I honestly would say anything with the inline four, you got to rev those bikes out so far to make any power. So it makes for just, uncomfortable riding in the city, to be honest. It's not as comfortable as you would think. Those tall gears are nice for top end speed, but if you're like me and kind of just, ride through the city, you're not really going to benefit from those taller gears. Now let's talk about the pros of these sport bikes. One is going to be handling. Through corners, sports bikes just feel so much better in any class, 1000cc, 600, 650, 400. The ergonomics, they're better. They're really made for those twisties. There's just a different feel when you're on a sport bike. You can kind of just feel, this bike was designed to take those turns. So that's definitely going to be the first pro. Now, second is going to kind of play into that seating position con we talked about. But there is also a pro to the seating position plus having full fairings, and that is the fact that all the wind is actually deflected. Now, for a highway riding especially, that makes it super nice because, you're not just sitting there like getting shooken all around like I am on this bike when I'm on the highway. But I don't find myself doing a lot of highway commuting, so it's really not a big deal to me. But depending on what you're looking for, that could be a deal breaker for you. So now that we've kind of covered basic pros and cons of both naked and fully paired bikes, I want to talk for a minute about, real world practicality. What is it like riding a naked bike? What is it like riding a sport bike? And which should you choose? Now, from a real world standpoint, naked bikes are really just made for the streets. You have lots of punchy power. You're sitting upright, so there's not all that pressure on your wrists and back like there is with a fully fared bike when you're hunched over the tank like that. So it's just altogether more comfortable, again, designed for the street. So they're much more practical. The way they make power, you can actually use it on the road without instantly going felony speed. However, working our way into these sports bikes here, there is some nice things about that. If you find yourself kind of enjoying that Instagram style S1K kind of riding, you know exactly what I mean, then the top speed on a naked bike is not going to be great for you. And that's definitely another con for naked bikes, is going to be their top speed. They do lack in top speed. Sports bikes are going to be a lot more practical on the highway, being that they have more power most of the time, unless we're talking lower CC classes. Another thing is just going to be that wind, again, is not going to be in your face. Better aerodynamics and the stability going fast on a sport bike. You feel so much more stable on a sport bike, so much more safer going high speeds because of the way that the wind kind of goes around you and isn't just slapping you in the face, kind of trying to pull you off that bike as much. So definitely, if you plan on going fast, the sport bike is going to be more practical. If you plan on doing a lot of highway commuting, the sport bike is going to be more practical. You really got to ask yourself, what type of riding are you going to be doing? And be honest with yourself. I know you want a sport bike. I know you want to look cool. You want your bike to look fast and aggressive. You want to flex on, every chick on social media. I get it. But at the same time, you got to get what bike is, you're going to keep for a long amount of time and have a good time on, be comfortable on it, and all of the above. So you really got to be honest with yourself when asking yourself, what kind of riding do I plan on doing? Now, again, this all kind of goes back to my previous point that you kind of got to ask yourself what kind of riding you're going to be doing and be honest with yourself about it. But another thing to consider is, that style of riding, doing crazy stuff on the highway. Well, yeah, adrenaline is fun. Obviously, we all ride bike. I don't think any of us always go the speed limit. But the thing is, you got to ask yourself, is that adrenaline rush worth possibly harming myself or others? Because you can hurt others while doing stupid stuff on a motorcycle. You gotta ask yourself, am I making a good decision with the bike I'm getting? I'm not trying to say that every sport bike you buy is a bad decision and you're not gonna, wreak havoc on the streets. But I'm just saying, think about the type of riding that you should be doing, that you want to be doing long term. Maybe you'll be going fast at first. Are you going to chill out over time? Ride safer? Are you going to do those things? And if the answer is yes, and you want to have fun still, a bike like this is perfect. You kind of get the best of both worlds where you still get the power, the torque, but you can do it comfortably, and you don't have to constantly wring out all the gears to feel like you're having a good time. At the end of the day, I think any motorcycle you buy, you're probably going to have a good time on. You probably won't regret it unless you're one of those people that, riding is just not for you. So I think, you can buy either bike and have fun. These are all just things to consider. Don't make the same mistake I did buying 1,800 bikes trying to figure out, what bike is right for me, what bike am I going to enjoy. I thought I was all about that fast lifestyle and quickly realized, this isn't worth it. This isn't even worth the temptation of, knowing I can rev this bike out and go triple digits in a couple of seconds. It's just the temptation was there and it wasn't worth it. So ask yourself all the questions, think about this, and really think about it. Don't just be like, oh no, I want to ride fast. Really try to see it from both perspectives. But that's all I really had. Thanks for watching.